The autumn wind swept across the Montana plains like a lonesome ghost, carrying with it the scent of sage and the promise of winter. Samuel "Sam" McKinney stood on the porch of his weathered ranch house, his weathered hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of amber and crimson. At 42, Sam had the look of a man who'd seen more than his share of hardship. Deep lines etched around steel-gray eyes, shoulders that carried the weight of too many losses, and calloused hands that knew both violence and tenderness. The McKinney ranch stretched for thousands of acres, but these days it felt more like a monument to loneliness than a working cattle operation. 3 years had passed since the Apache raids that claimed the lives of his dozen ranch hands, his foreman, and very nearly Sam himself. The scar that ran from his left ear to his collar served as a daily reminder of that terrible night when smoke filled the sky and the screams of horses mingled with the war cries of desperate men fighting for their ancestral lands. Sam had rebuilt what he could, but a man could only do so much alone. The cattle had long since been sold off, save for a small herd he kept for personal use. The bunkhouse stood empty, its windows staring out like hollow eyes. Most evenings, the only sounds were the creaking of timber settling in the cooling air and the distant howl of coyotes singing their ancient songs to the stars. He'd had offers to sell, plenty of them. Eastern investors with deep pockets and bigger dreams had come calling, offering sums that would set him up comfortable for the rest of his days in San Francisco or Denver. But Sam couldn't bring himself to leave. This land held the bones of his dreams, the graves of good men who'd died defending it, and something deeper that he couldn't quite name. His late wife Mary's garden still bloomed wild behind the house, tended by rain and stubbornness alone. The coffee had grown cold in his hands when he first spotted the dust cloud on the eastern horizon. In this country, dust meant riders, and riders could mean trouble or opportunity in equal measure. Sam set down his cup and walked to the edge of the porch, one hand instinctively checking the colt at his hip. 3 years of solitude had made him cautious of unexpected visitors. As the cloud drew closer, Sam made out the shapes of horses and riders, many of them. Too many for a casual visit or even a cattle drive passing through. His jaw tightened as memories of that terrible night 3 years ago threatened to surface. But as the group approached, something seemed different. The riders moved with purpose but not aggression, and as they came within 100 yards of the house, Sam could see they were women. Native women, he realized, their long black hair catching the last light of day. They rode with the easy grace of people born to the saddle, but there was something in their posture that spoke of weariness deeper than physical exhaustion. They drew their horses to a halt at the boundary of his property, just beyond the wooden fence that marked the beginning of his yard. One woman urged her horse forward, a magnificent painted mare that danced beneath her with barely contained energy. The woman herself was perhaps 30 years old, with high cheekbones and dark eyes that held depths of sorrow Sam recognized. She wore traditional Cherokee dress, beautifully crafted but showing signs of hard travel. When she spoke, her English was clear and precise, touched with an accent that spoke of education alongside traditional upbringing. "You are Samuel McKinney," she said. "It wasn't a question. I am." Sam stepped down from the porch, keeping his hands visible but ready. "And you are?" "I am Ayanna of the Cherokee, daughter of Chief Sequoia of the Eastern Band." Her voice carried the weight of authority, but also something else, desperation carefully controlled. "We have traveled far to find you, Samuel McKinney. We have heard you are a man of honor, a man who keeps his word." Sam's eyes swept the group behind her. 30 women, he counted, all Cherokee, all young enough to be in their childbearing years. Some looked to be barely out of their teens, others approaching middle age. All wore the same expression of guarded hope mixed with bone-deep weariness. "What brings you to my land, Ayanna, daughter of Sequoia?" She dismounted with fluid grace, and Sam noticed she moved with a slight stiffness of someone who'd been riding hard for many days. The other women remained mounted, but he could feel their eyes on him, measuring, evaluating. "We come with a request that may seem strange to your ears," Ayanna said, her dark eyes never leaving his face. "But before I speak it, you must understand what has befallen our people." Sam gestured toward the porch. "You and your women look like you could use water and rest. I don't have much, but what I have is yours." Something shifted in Ayanna's expression, surprise, perhaps, at the offered kindness. She turned and spoke rapidly in Cherokee to the women behind her. Several dismounted and began tending to the horses, while others approached the water trough Sam kept filled for his own animals. "You are kind," Iona said, following Sam onto the porch. "It has been many days since we encountered such courtesy." Sam brought out a pitcher of water and 2 cups, settling into one of the wooden chairs that had sat empty for too long. Iona accepted the water gratefully, drinking deeply before continuing her story. "6 moons ago, disease came to our village," she began, her voice steady, but Sam could hear the pain beneath the words. "Not the white man's smallpox or the spotted fever, but something else. Something that took our men. All of them. Fathers, husbands, brothers, sons. Even the boy children who had seen only 8 or 9 winters." Sam felt his chest tighten. He'd seen disease work its way through communities before, but what she described was beyond anything he'd witnessed. "The medicine men said it was a curse brought by our sorrow, by the tears of our grandmothers who walked the trail of tears," Iona continued. "Others said it was punishment for turning away from the old ways. I know only that it took them all, leaving 30 women and no future for our bloodline." She paused, staring out at the darkening sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "We lost all our men, Samuel McKinney. Every last one." The weight of those words settled between them like a physical thing. Sam had lost his ranch hands, his friends, but he'd never faced the complete extinction of everything he knew and loved. "We have wandered for 3 moons, Iona continued, seeking answers from the spirits, from other Cherokee bands, from anyone who might offer hope. But everywhere we go, we find the same story. The Cherokee nation grows smaller with each passing season. Our children are taken to white schools where they forget our language. Our men die in wars that are not ours or from liquor that poisons their spirits along with their bodies." She turned to face him directly, and Sam saw a fierce determination burning in her dark eyes. "We are the last pure-blood Cherokee of our clan, Samuel McKinney. If we do not find a way to continue our line, our ancestors will have no one to remember their names. Our stories will die with us. Our children will never learn the old songs or hear the words of their great-great-grandmothers." Sam began to understand where this conversation was leading, and the realization sent a chill down his spine that had nothing to do with the evening air. "What is it you're asking of me, Iona?" She stood and walked to the edge of the porch, her hands gripping the wooden railing. The other Cherokee women had made a small camp in his yard, their low voices carrying on the wind as they spoke in their native tongue. "We have heard stories of you, Samuel McKinney. They say you loved your Cherokee wife with a devotion that honored both your peoples. They say you learned our language, participated in our ceremonies, that you understood what it meant to live between 2 worlds." Sam's breath caught. He hadn't spoken of Mary to anyone in years, hadn't heard her Cherokee name on anyone's lips since her death from fever 5 years ago. "Mary Crow Feather was the best part of me," he said quietly. "When she died, I thought I'd lost everything worth living for." "She bore you no children." It wasn't a question, but Sam answered anyway. "She wanted them. We both did. But it wasn't meant to be." Iona turned back to face him, and Sam saw tears glistening in her eyes. "We know what we ask may seem impossible, may seem wrong to your white man's way of thinking. But we are desperate, Samuel McKinney. We are the end of something that has existed for 1,000 years, and we cannot let it die." She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders like a warrior preparing for battle. "We ask you to help us bear children, to be the father our tribe needs so that Cherokee blood may continue to flow in the veins of a new generation. We ask you to help us save our people from vanishing completely from this earth." The silence that followed stretched between them like a canyon. Sam stared at her, trying to process what she'd just asked. 30 women. The continuation of an entire bloodline. The responsibility was staggering. "Iona," he began, but she held up a hand. "Before you answer, you must understand what we offer in return. We are not asking for charity or pity. We offer you partnership, a chance to rebuild not just your ranch but something greater. We know the old ways of living with the land, of growing things, of making a home that honors both the earth and those who dwell upon it." She gestured toward the other women. "Among us are healers, teachers, craftswomen, farmers. We can make this empty place live again, can fill it with purpose and joy. We ask not for your seed alone, but for your leadership, your protection, your commitment to the future we might build together." Sam stood and walked to the opposite end of the porch, his mind reeling. The moral implications were staggering, but so was the alternative, watching an entire people fade into history. He thought of Mary, of the children they'd never had, of the empty years stretching ahead of him. "This arrangement you propose," he said finally, "it wouldn't be marriage as white folks understand it." "No," Ayanna agreed. "It would be something older, something that honors necessity above convention. In the old days, when tribes were decimated by war or disease, such arrangements were not unknown. The continuation of the people was more important than individual desires. And the children, what kind of life would they have?" For the first time since she'd begun speaking, Ayanna smiled. It transformed her face, revealing the beauty that sorrow had hidden. They would be Cherokee, Samuel McKinney. They would know their mother's stories, their mother's songs. They would understand the language of the wind and the wisdom of their grandmothers. But they would also know their father's strength, his courage, his determination to build something lasting in this hard land. She paused, her expression growing serious again. And they would know that they exist because two peoples chose hope over despair, chose life over the slow death of surrendering to fate. Sam closed his eyes and tried to imagine it, this ranch filled with voices, with children learning to ride and rope, with women teaching ancient skills and keeping alive traditions that stretched back centuries. It would mean the end of his solitude, the beginning of something he couldn't quite envision. "You said you've heard stories about me," he said. "What else have you heard?" "That you are a man who keeps his word, no matter the cost. That you once rode 3 days through Apache territory to return the body of a Cherokee brave to his family for proper burial. That you have never broken a promise to anyone, white or Indian." Sam remembered that ride. The young man had died helping defend the ranch, and Sam had felt honor-bound to see him home. It had nearly cost him his life, but some things mattered more than personal safety. "And that you are capable of great love," Ayanna continued softly. "The way you loved Mary Crowfeather is still spoken of in Cherokee camps. They say you learned our ways not to change us, but to better understand the woman you loved." Those words hit him harder than any physical blow. Mary had been his anchor, his reason for becoming a better man than he'd ever thought possible. After her death, he'd felt adrift, purposeless. "If I agreed to this," Sam said slowly, "what would it look like? How would we manage such an arrangement?" Ayanna considered his question carefully. "We would become your family, in all the ways that matter. We would work your land, tend your animals, make your house a home. In time, as children came, we would raise them together, all of us responsible for their welfare and education." She paused, choosing her words with obvious care. "As for the more intimate aspects of what we propose, that would be guided by mutual respect and the understanding that our goal is not pleasure but preservation. Each woman would come to you when the time was right for conception, and we would trust that you would treat her with the gentleness and honor that Mary Crowfeather taught you our people deserve." Sam found himself thinking of practical matters: housing, food, medical care, the reactions of neighbors and the territorial government. The challenges would be enormous. "This territory isn't always kind to mixed families," he warned. "There are those who would see what we're attempting as an abomination." "We have faced hatred before," Ayanna replied. "Our people have survived things that would have destroyed others. We do not fear the opinions of those who value the color of skin over the content of hearts." As if summoned by their conversation, one of the younger women approached the porch. She was perhaps 20, with the same high cheekbones as Ayanna but a softer, rounder face that spoke of easier times before tragedy struck her people. "This is my sister, Nayeli," Ayanna said. "She was to be married the week the sickness came. Her intended was a good man, a skilled hunter who would have given her many children." Nayeli's English was less polished than her sister's, but her sincerity was unmistakable. "I have no wish to shame my people by dying without children," she said. "If you will help us, Samuel McKinney, I will be honored to bear your child and raise them to know the old ways." The simple dignity of her words, the quiet courage in her voice, moved Sam in ways he hadn't expected. These women weren't asking him to rescue them. They were offering him the chance to be part of something larger than himself, something that might give meaning to the empty years ahead. "You would need to understand," Sam said, addressing both women, "that if we do this, it won't be easy. Building a life for 30 women and however many children might come, that's going to require resources, planning, and more work than any of us can fully imagine right now." "We are not afraid of work," Ayanna assured him. "Cherokee women have always been partners, not burdens. We will contribute everything we have to making this succeed." Sam walked to the edge of the porch again, looking out at the camp the women had made. They'd worked with quiet efficiency to tend their horses, gather firewood, and prepare a simple meal from their travel supplies. Even in their exhaustion, they moved with purpose and skill. "I need time to think," he said finally. "This isn't a decision to be made lightly." "Of course." Ayanna's relief was evident. "We ask only that you consider what we have said. We can wait. You're welcome to camp here while I decide. There's a creek about a quarter-mile that way for fresh water, and you can turn your horses into the near pasture. I've got some supplies I can share: flour, coffee, salt pork." The gratitude in both women's eyes was humbling. Sam realized that despite their proud words about partnership and contribution, they were still refugees, still displaced people carrying everything they owned on their backs. That night, Sam lay awake listening to the sounds of the Cherokee camp, low voices speaking in their ancient language, the soft whinny of horses, the crackle of their fire. For the first time in 3 years, his ranch felt alive. He thought about Mary, about the conversations they'd had during their brief marriage about children, about family, about what it meant to build something lasting. She'd often spoken of her sadness that Cherokee traditions were being lost, that children were growing up without knowing the stories of their ancestors. "What would you tell me to do, Mary?" he whispered to the darkness. As if in answer, he found himself remembering something she'd said during her final illness. "Promise me, Sam, that you won't let bitterness make you forget how to love. There's too little love in this world to waste what you have to give." The next morning, Sam rose before dawn as was his habit and found Ayanna already awake, sitting by the dying embers of the fire, watching the eastern sky lighten. The other women were still asleep, wrapped in blankets and lying close together for warmth. "Couldn't sleep either?" Sam asked quietly. "I am not used to sleeping in one place," she admitted. "For 3 months, we have been wanderers. It feels strange to rest without the need to watch the horizon." Sam poured coffee from the pot he'd brought out and offered her a cup. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. "Tell me about your village," Sam said eventually. "Before the sickness came." Ayanna's expression softened, and she began to speak of a life that sounded almost mythical to Sam's ears. A community where Cherokee and white neighbors coexisted, where children learned both English and Cherokee, where the old ceremonies were performed alongside Christian services. It had been, she said, a glimpse of what the world might become if people chose understanding over fear. "It was not perfect," she admitted. "There were those on both sides who resented the mixing of ways. But for a time, it seemed possible that our peoples might find a path forward together. And now we are the last." Her voice was matter-of-fact, but Sam heard the weight of responsibility in it. "If we fail, that dream dies with us." As the morning progressed and the other women began to stir, Sam found himself watching them with new eyes. These weren't just desperate refugees. They were the keepers of traditions, languages, skills, and stories that stretched back generations. The young woman grinding corn for breakfast moved with motions that had been passed down from grandmother to granddaughter for centuries. The older woman tending a sick horse used knowledge that predated written veterinary texts. Around midday, a small group of white ranchers rode up, neighbors Sam knew casually but had rarely spoken to since Mary's death. Their leader, a man named Henderson who ran cattle on the spread to the west, dismounted with the swagger of someone used to having his opinions heard. "McKinney," Henderson said, touching his hat brim in a perfunctory greeting. "Heard you got yourself some Indian visitors." "I do," Sam replied evenly. "Cherokee women who've lost their menfolk to disease." Henderson's eyes swept the camp, taking in the women who had stopped their activities to watch the newcomers. Sam didn't miss the way some of the men looked at the younger Cherokee women, and he felt his jaw tighten. "Well now, that's right charitable of you, offering them water and what not," Henderson continued. "But you know you can't let them stay. Territory's got laws about vagrancy, and besides, having that many Indians camped on your land is asking for trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Sam asked quietly. "You know how it is. Indians got a way of attracting more Indians, and before you know it, you got yourself a whole camp of them. Then come the complaints about missing cattle, raids on homesteads, that sort of thing." Sam stepped closer to Henderson, close enough that the man had to crane his neck to meet his eyes. "These women haven't stolen so much as a blade of grass, Henderson. They're grieving widows trying to figure out their next step." "Maybe so, but folks are already talking. Some are saying you might be getting yourself too friendly with the squaws, if you catch my meaning." The insult hung in the air between them like smoke from a poorly tended fire. Sam felt the familiar cold rage that had served him well in more violent times, but he kept his voice level. "I catch your meaning fine, Henderson. And I think it's time for you and your friends to ride on." Henderson took a step back, clearly recognizing the danger in Sam's tone. "Now don't go getting all riled up, McKinney. I'm just saying what neighbors ought to say. Keep your eyes open, watch yourself around them Indians." "I'll keep my eyes open," Sam assured him, "especially where my neighbors are concerned." After the men had ridden away, Ayanna approached him with an expression of concern. "We have brought trouble to your door, Samuel McKinney. Perhaps we should move on." "The only trouble here is the kind that's been festering in small minds for too long," Sam replied. "But I won't lie to you, if you stay, if we do what you're proposing, there'll be more of that. Some folks won't understand, and they won't hesitate to make their feelings known." "Are you saying you've decided?" Sam looked out at the Cherokee women, who had resumed their activities but were clearly listening to the conversation. Young and old, they all bore the same expression of quiet dignity mixed with desperate hope. "I'm saying that Mary always told me the right choice is usually the hard choice. And helping 30 women build a future for their children while they help me build something meaningful on this land, that feels like the right choice, even if it's going to be the hard one." Ayanna's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back quickly. "You will do this? You will help us?" "I will," Sam said, surprised by how certain he felt. "But we're going to do this right. No shame, no hiding, no treating anyone like they're less than human. If we're building a family, we're building it on a foundation of respect and dignity." The transformation in the Cherokee camp was immediate and profound. Women who had carried themselves with the stoic endurance of refugees suddenly moved with the purposeful energy of people who had found their place. Within hours, they had begun making improvements, repairing tools, organizing supplies, assessing the ranch's needs with the eyes of partners rather than guests. Ayanna proved to be not just their leader but their organizer. She divided the women into groups based on their skills and interests. Those who understood livestock would help expand the herd, those skilled in agriculture would establish gardens and fields, those with healing knowledge would serve as the community's medical care, and those gifted in crafts would produce goods for trade. "We cannot simply take from you," she explained to Sam as they walked through the empty bunkhouse that would need to be expanded and renovated. "Cherokee people have always believed that every person must contribute to the whole. We will make this ranch not just profitable again, but prosperous in ways you have not imagined." The first woman to approach him about bearing a child was not Ayanna, as he had expected, but Sequoia, a quiet woman in her late 20s who had lost both her husband and 2 young sons to the plague. She came to him on an evening when the autumn air carried the first real bite of winter, and her request was made with the same straightforward dignity that seemed to characterize all these Cherokee women. "The time is right for me," she said simply. "If you are willing, I would be honored to carry your child." Sam had thought he was prepared for this moment, but faced with the reality of it, he found himself struggling for words. This wasn't romance or passion. It was something more profound and more frightening. It was the conscious decision to create life in service of something greater than personal desire. "Are you certain, Sequoia? This is a choice that can't be undone." "I have been certain since the day we learned all our men were gone," she replied. "I have grieved my husband and my sons, and I will carry that grief always. But I will not let it prevent me from bringing new life into the world." That night, in the privacy of his own home, Sam and Sequoia came together with a tenderness that surprised them both. There was no pretense of love between them, but there was respect, hope, and a shared commitment to the future they were trying to build. When it was over, she remained for a while, and they talked quietly about her dreams for the child that might come from their union. "I want them to know both worlds," she said, her hand resting on her still flat belly. "To be strong like their father but wise in the Cherokee way like their mother." Over the following weeks, similar conversations took place with other women. Each approach was different, some formal and ceremonial, others casual and practical, but all shared the same underlying dignity and purpose. Sam found himself developing relationships with these women that defied easy categorization. They were not wives in the traditional sense, nor were they merely partners in a business arrangement. They were something new, something that honored both necessity and human dignity. As winter approached, the transformation of the ranch continued. The Cherokee women had proven themselves to be remarkable partners in every sense. They had expanded the vegetable gardens, improved the care of the livestock, and begun trading their crafts in town for supplies and materials. More importantly, they had brought life back to a place that had been slowly dying. The first pregnancy was confirmed in late November. Sequoia's quiet joy was infectious, and the entire community celebrated as if they were welcoming their own family member's good news. Sam felt a mixture of pride, terror, and wonder that he'd never experienced before. By Christmas, 3 more women were expecting. The ranch house had been expanded to accommodate the growing community, and the bunkhouse had been converted into comfortable living quarters. What had once been a monument to loneliness had become a bustling center of life and activity. The neighboring ranchers' attitudes had not improved, but their direct opposition had lessened as it became clear that the Cherokee women were contributing to the local economy rather than draining resources. Still, Sam knew that the real test would come when the children started arriving. The first baby was born on a snowy February morning, a healthy boy with Sam's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. Sequoia named him Thomas after Sam's father, but also gave him a Cherokee name, Atsadi, meaning fish, because he had been conceived beside the creek that ran through the ranch. Holding his son for the first time, Sam felt something shift inside him, a fierce protectiveness he'd never known, mixed with a humility that brought tears to his eyes. This child was not just his son, but the future of 2 peoples, the bridge between 2 worlds that Mary had always dreamed might exist. As spring arrived and the first son grew strong in his mother's arms, other pregnancies reached their conclusions. By summer, there were 5 children on the ranch, 4 boys and 1 girl, all healthy, all beautiful blends of their parents' heritage. The Cherokee women had not only succeeded in their primary goal but had exceeded Sam's wildest expectations for what the ranch might become. They had established trade relationships with neighboring communities, started a school where children would learn both English and Cherokee, and created a model of cooperation that began to attract attention from far beyond Montana territory. But perhaps most importantly, they had created something neither Sam nor the Cherokee women could have achieved alone, a family. Not a traditional family, certainly, but one bound together by shared purpose, mutual respect, and love for the children who represented their collective future. One evening, as Sam sat on his porch watching Cherokee children play in the yard where once only silence had reigned, Ayanna joined him. She was visibly pregnant with her own child, their child, and glowed with the contentment of a woman who had found her purpose. "Do you ever regret what we asked of you?" she inquired, settling into the chair beside him. Sam considered the question seriously. The past year had brought challenges he'd never imagined. Prejudice from some neighbors, legal complications with territorial authorities, and the constant responsibility of being father to a growing number of children. But it had also brought joy, purpose, and a sense of belonging that he'd lost when Mary died. "Not for a minute," he said finally. "You women didn't just save your people from extinction. You saved me from a life that had stopped meaning anything." As if summoned by their conversation, young Thomas toddled over on unsteady legs, chattering in a mixture of English and Cherokee that delighted everyone who heard it. Sam picked up his son and marveled again at the miracle of this child who carried within him the hopes of 2 peoples. "He will never lack for mothers or fathers," Ayanna observed, watching the other Cherokee women fuss over the boy. "All of our children will know they are loved by many, that they belong to something larger than themselves." Sam nodded, thinking about the future these children would inherit. They would face challenges, certainly, prejudice, questions about their identity, the difficulty of living between two cultures. But they would also have advantages that most children lacked: multiple languages, diverse skills, the wisdom of two traditions, and the unshakable knowledge that they existed because people chose hope over despair. As the sun set behind the mountains and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Sam reflected on the strange journey that had brought him to this moment. 3 years ago, he had been a man waiting to die, marking time in a place haunted by ghosts. Now he was the father of 5 children with more on the way, the husband to women who had redefined his understanding of marriage and family, and the guardian of traditions that stretched back centuries. The Cherokee women had indeed lost all their men, but in asking Sam to help them preserve their people, they had given him something he hadn't even realized he'd lost: a reason to live that extended beyond his own survival. Together, they had created something unprecedented: a community that honored both individual dignity and collective responsibility, that celebrated diversity while maintaining unity of purpose. As young Thomas fell asleep in his arms and the sounds of Cherokee lullabies drifted from the houses where other children were being put to bed, Sam knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a family. Not a traditional family, perhaps, but one bound together by something stronger than convention: the shared commitment to ensuring that love, hope, and cultural wisdom would survive and flourish in the generations to come. The ranch that had once echoed with loneliness now rang with the laughter of children who would grow up knowing they were living proof that sometimes the most unconventional choices lead to the most meaningful lives. In helping the Cherokee women preserve their bloodline, Sam had discovered something he'd never expected: that home isn't a place or even a people, but rather the decision to build something beautiful in the face of loss, and to believe that the future can be better than the past if we're willing to work and sacrifice to make it so.